2019-273, 74, and 75 have been requested to come to the full board from committee this evening. Is there a motion with those additions?
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the agenda?
Can you repeat those three that are?
Resolution 2019-273, which I believe is from Operations and Environment, Carbon Footprint Study. 74 and 75, I believe, are in planning, and their access utility agreements with, I believe,
Centerpoint
Energy, excuse me. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the agenda with those additions signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the agenda carries. I would entertain a motion for the approval of the minutes of June 26th. It's been moved. Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the minutes of June 26th? Seeing none, all of those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the minutes carry. Reports of officers, Superintendent Bangor.
Thank you, President Board and Commissioners, and welcome. We'll start with athletics, aquatics, and ice arenas. The Youth City Finals track meet is this Thursday, which is, of course, tomorrow at 6 p.m. at Roosevelt High School. Commissioners are invited to come out and support the hundreds of track athletes and their families who cheer them on. And given that the track meet is wonderful, so we look forward to seeing you if you can make it. Thanks to the partnership with the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office, WISE program, we are receiving funding to expand our swimming and water safety programs, provide more people with swimwear, and teach more people to swim. We are grateful to the Minneapolis Bike Corps of Kids program at Children's Hospital. We received new bike helmets for the Girls Adventure Bike program with the Combs Community Center. And this is a new initiative and registration is already full. The program is on Tuesday evenings at Nokomis. And just a quick back on the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office WISE program. I was out there yesterday, and what an amazing, wonderful gift from the Hennepin County Sheriff and Hutchison and his team. We're very grateful for that. It was great to see Mohammed, who was a young man that went through the program, and he's now a lifeguard. So what an exciting thing to see. So thank you again for that wonderful program. Recreation centers and programs. Safety camp at Theodore Park is happening this week. July 9th through the 11th, 9:30 a.m. to 4 o'clock p.m. daily with over 120 participants. Youth Line participants from Whittier, East Phillips, Farview, and Fowler Park are participating in the NIPM project, the National Youth Project, using mini bikes to develop self-esteem, thinking, and teamwork skills through the use of mini bikes. NIPM, a Boston-based nonprofit, uses mini bikes as a motivational and educational tool to facilitate personal development, supporting youth to make good decisions at school, home, and at their communities. And I've known this program for years. It's a really fun and wonderful program. So again, thank you to NIPM for that. Forestry crews are working to remove ash trees around the chain of lakes. The Star Tribune published a very accurate article about the work in its July 5th issue. And if you look, there will be a link to that article in the Star Tribune, of course, under ash tree removal. So thank you again for that. Information and technology. IT has completed moving to the NASPRO contract with Verizon that the board approved in April 17, 2019. We estimate that this will result in cost savings of approximately $9,000 per month over what we were paying before. So great savings. Customer service. The installation of a new dock at Lake Harriet on the south side of the buoy field, west side of the lake, was completed on Friday, June 28th. We've already received comments such as, the docks are sweet and already heavily used by boats, rafts, etc. And the dock is awesome. So we have one tender boat located at the new dock for the far side of the buoy field, and reports have been very positive on its use thus far. Very happy about that. Okay. Let's see here, just a note and thank you and high five to Kent Ansel and Dan Falk and their crews for their work to design and create our first dedicated children's bench. A photo of the bench with the Finn family is attached. The Finns dreamed up of the dedicated and children's bench in memory of their fourth child, Amos. The bench is located right next to the elf tree at West Lake Harriet. The plaque is currently being engraved and will be mounted on the top bench board later this month. The family wished to have the bench installed prior to the plaque being ready, as they wanted to honor Amos' July due date. The 4th of July celebration, quick notes on that. The Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board Red, White, and Boom Independence Day celebration took place at the Father Hennepin Bluff Park. More than 70,000 people on both sides of the river enjoyed the celebration. The celebration featured live music from local artists, Yesterdawn, the Prize Fighters, Sawyer's Dream, and our very own Trey Aaron. The popular family area offered caricatures, balloon art, wacky hair, and face painting, all free of charge. The event also brought summer food, drink, and ice cream to Minneapolis with options for every taste. A huge shout out to Tom Godfrey, Erica Chua, Aaron Renner, Tony Sherburn, Tim Dumas, Radius Guest, and Corky Weissman for their hard work to organize the event, along with our access and outreach staff, urban scholars, youth engagement team, Park Police Lieutenant Kevin Noble, and maintenance staff Jeff Van Gilder and Doug Moberg. The Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board's Red, White, and Boom Independence Day celebration took place at the Father Hennepin Bluff Park. And again, much thanks to the team that was out there, did a wonderful job. And I was actually there that day, and it was really incredible to see people out there enjoying themselves, and so proud of this July celebration, July 4th celebration. So again, thank you to staff. Somali Week. The Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board supported the 2019 Somali American Independence Day celebration, also known as Somali Week, to build community ties across the Twin Cities of Minnesota. Thousands of people, including soccer players, families, kids, gathered in South Minneapolis during Somali Week. The Community Outreach Department partnered with the West Bank Athletic Club to host a summer festival and Somali soccer tournament at Murphy Square Park. Athletes from 12 states participated in a week-long tournament, allowing guests and their families to enjoy our parks. Curry Park and Brian Coyle supported spaces for the week-long annual celebration. And again, I was at that event, and it was just wonderful to see the players out at the soccer field, and to see Murray Square being used, and again, very proud to be a part of that and to be celebrating with our community. So again, thank you for the work around that, and I believe that is everything I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. Are there any questions from commissioners? Commissioner Forney.
I would just like to thank you for, in our board packet at the end, the benchmarks and goals. I love seeing that report. The productivity is very impressive, and I look forward to future ones.
Thank you, Commissioner Forney. Is there any other questions for the superintendent? Commissioner Colgill?
That mini bike program, are they doing like wheelies? Is it like 12 o'clock boys up there, or have you seen this before? Do you know? Just out of
I
curiosity.
can't speak directly to what they were doing out there, but I know, I'm sure they're having fun, and
Great.
yeah.
Cool.
But I know they have a great time, and they learn how to ride safely and have a great time, so.
Nice.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Colgill. Thank you, Superintendent. Moving on to the consent agenda, I would entertain a resolution for to approve resolutions 2019-266 through 2019-271.
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the consent agenda? Seeing none, all of those in favor of resolutions 2019-266 through 271, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the consent agenda carries. Chair Vita.
I would like to move Resolution 2019-251, resolution amending the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board 2019 through 2024 capital improvement program to allocate up to $40,000 from the East Isles neighborhood portion of the Parkland Dedication Fund for use in implementing a shade structure in the Joanne R. Levin Triangle, a neighborhood park in the East Isles neighborhood, pending approval of the Southwest Service Area Master Plan.
2019-251 has been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing one, Commissioner Cogill.
I just want to say I appreciate staff bringing this forward. I'm looking forward to our adoption of the service area master plan as these CAC meetings wrap up, and appreciate the neighborhood support throughout this process, and look forward to a continued collaboration as we get this underway. It's greatly needed at this park after losing a beloved old tree there, to make sure that all the kids are able to be out at the playground. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Cogill. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of 2019-251, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the motion carries. Congratulations, Commissioner Cogill. Chair Vita.
I would like to move Resolution 2019-252, resolution approving an amended and restated lease agreement with the Fred Wells Tennis and Education Center for leased land within the upper post of Fort Snelling.
Resolution 2019-252 has been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the resolution? Seeing none, I would, Deputy Superintendent.
President Board and Commissioners, I believe this is one that staff asked would be referred back to committee to do some additional work on it.
Okay. So would there be a substitute resolution to refer back to committee?
Yes.
There is,
I would
No,
make a
he
motion
can't
to
say
return to
that's the
committee.
problem.
I'm hearing a motion. Is there a second to the substitute?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on this, any discussion on the substitute motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of substituting the resolution with a resolution to refer back to committee, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the resolution has been substituted. Is there any discussion on the resolution to refer the lease back to committee? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution to refer back to committee, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the resolution is referred back to the Administration and Finance Committee. Chair Vita.
I would like to move Resolution 2019-253, a resolution accepting Capital Project Fund Agreement Amendment Number 2 from the Mississippi Watershed Management Organization to use renaming grant funds for operations and maintenance support for the Minneapolis Sculpture Garden and Parade Park, and to revise the termination date to December 31st, 2020.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on 2019-253? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the resolution carries.
I would like to move Resolution 2019-254, resolution approving a one-year lease agreement as amended with Lime for the operations of motorized scooter shared throughout the Minneapolis Park, and approving the amended license agreement with Lift and Spin.
2019-254 has been moved, just with a note that it's a license agreement, not a lease agreement. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on 254? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions?
Abstaining.
And one abstention. The resolution carries. Chair Forney.
On behalf of the Planning Committee, I'd like to move Resolution 2019-256, resolution approving the Mississippi Gorge Regional Park Master Plan and formally naming the park Mississippi Gorge Regional Park, as it is commonly known.
The resolution has been moved. I am ruling Resolution 2019-256 is out of order. In its place, I would consider two additional resolutions. One resolution approving the Mississippi Gorge Regional Park Master Plan, and a second resolution to refer the naming of the amenity commonly known as the Mississippi Gorge Regional Park to the Committee on Administration and Finance. Is there,
So moved, or two separate motions, so.
yes, so why don't we deal with them one at a time? It looks like the first, Commissioner Meyer, you're moving a resolution to approve the Mississippi Gorge Regional Park Master Plan.
Yes.
All right, that has been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the resolution to approve the Mississippi Gorge Regional Park Master Plan? Commissioner Forney. or I'm sorry, excuse me, Commissioner Musich, followed by Commissioner Forney.
Thank you, President Bourne. I guess I'm confused why it is that you're ruling this out of motion, as you're the one that put this agenda together with it on the agenda in that format. Could you explain to me why it wasn't updated prior to coming to the board to meet the standards of the chair?
Thank you, Commissioner Musich. As the chair, I'm not entitled to change resolutions at my discretion as they come up from committee. This is the resolution that the Committee on Planning passed. The chair of the Planning Committee ruled it in order. After looking at the Park Board's naming policies, the resolution as written violates the Minneapolis Park Board's naming policy, so I'm ruling this resolution out of order.
Thank you for the explanation.
Further discussion, Commissioner Forney.
I'm still taking that in, so I guess I don't have anything to say. Sorry.
Is there any further discussion on the resolution approving the Mississippi Gorge Regional Park Master Plan? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the Regional Park Master Plan for the Mississippi Gorge, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the motion carries. I would now entertain a resolution to refer the naming of the amenity commonly known as the Mississippi Gorge Regional Park to the Committee on Administration and Finance.
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on a resolution to refer the naming of the amenity commonly known as the Mississippi Gorge Regional Park to Admin and Finance? Commissioner Musich.
Thank you, President Bourne. If staff could please help me understand what the process will be for ensuring this can leave committee and come back to the board. My understanding was that the engagement components and other requirements of the naming policy have been met.
Assistant Superintendent Schroeder.
President Bourne, Commissioner Musich, I may have to defer a little bit to some others for some help on this. So the question was to explain the process and how we're going to move that through the committee process. The committee process will probably require us, if we're to act on the recommendations coming from the CAC regarding naming of this park amenity as the Pacific Gorge Regional Park, it would probably come attached with one of two processes, and staff will review these. One, to follow our typical naming process where we name it and consider it, and the other would be to suspend the naming process and define it as the Mississippi Gorge Regional Park as it's been commonly known for some time. This stems from the discovery during the planning process that the park was never officially named.
Okay, thank you. This body has on a number of occasions discussed modifying the naming policy, yet no modifications to that policy have yet come before this board. Is there an intention to have that happen so that we do not need to suspend the rules to rename things in the future and instead are utilizing our commonly held practices to rename things in a way that doesn't require suspension of the rules to do so?
President Bourne, Commissioner Musich, I think for that one I would defer to either the superintendent or deputy superintendent to understand if we've actually taken any action to reconsider the naming policy or procedure that's going to be coming up in a time that's aligned with this action.
Thank you.
President Bourne, Commissioners, I actually think this particular type of renaming is a little different than what the current draft policy includes, and so I think this would be one of several edits we would make to the existing draft policy. Because the existing draft policy restates the existing naming policy for items that are outside of being funded by donation. So if the board would want to be able to rename parks based on a name that's used in general circulation that isn't about an individual, we would probably need to update the draft policy to contemplate what those procedures should be. So in its current form, it would not address this particular situation.
And at what point do you intend for this board to take a vote on adopting the draft policy? Because I know we've been working on it since I started with the board 2014.
I don't have a specific date at this moment on that. It's something that continue to discuss with Superintendent Bangora and the President of the Board, and hope to bring it forward yet this year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Musich. Commissioner Forney.
Yes, I appreciate that, how should we say, that we're dividing this up to make sure that we are enacting it properly. The fact, though, that we have to suspend the rules to make it happen, I just feel like we're getting in a continual conundrum, and I guess there is no urgency about naming this commonly known as park. And so if we were to defer this until we do have a naming policy, or a updated naming policy, would make me feel a lot more comfortable, because we keep on breaching our policies. And so I feel this is one that could be held for a while. I'm not being disrespectful to the CAC and the CAC's work, but that we could hold off on that. So I would at least recommend that we hold that off until we have our set policy.
Thank you, Commissioner Forney. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I would just add that I am very appreciative of the work that the CAC has done, and I want to thank folks for approving the Regional Park Master Plan unanimously. I would say I do feel some urgency. This was part of their work, and I think it's a non-controversial item. And I would hope that the board would deal with this in quick action. Resolutions to suspend our rules are a normal part of policy. This was, I pulled this because all of our other naming pieces that we have addressed have included in their language a resolution to suspend our rules, which is commonplace. And I would hope that we would respect the CAC members enough for the work that they have done, and that the board would address this quickly. I think the board has some resolutions coming forward with some parkway renaming in the next month. We could consider them as a slate and just get that done for the folks that put in a lot of hard work on this. So that if there's no further discussion, all those in favor of the resolution to refer the naming of the Mississippi Gorge Regional Park back to the Committee on Administration and Finance, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? The resolution carries.
I'd like to move Resolution 2019-257, a resolution authorizing updated limited use permit number 2726-0182 with the State of Minnesota Department of Transportation to operate and maintain the portion of St. Anthony Parkway Regional Trail that is within the right-of-way of Trunk Highway 47 of the State of Minnesota.
President Bourne, it's 5:32.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on 2019-257? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the motion carries. Thank you, Commissioner Meyer. The time being 5:30, I'm going to take a break for a time-certain item called open time. Every regular meeting of the Park Board, we take public comment on virtually any topic from members of the public on anything that you would like the board to consider, address, or have on our radar. So we have a couple of guidelines that we just ask for folks while they're giving public comment. One is the total time does not exceed 15 minutes, and I allocate time based on that. Given the number of speakers that I have, I'm going to allocate every speaker 2 minutes, or up to 2 minutes. You'll have a microphone in front and a little stoplight that green, yellow, red to tell you where you're at in your comments. There's only a few things that the Park Board does not receive comment on during open time, and those are personnel issues or pending litigation. If the board and our executive team would love to hear your input on any of those, if you have them, but the most appropriate way to do that, out of respect for the individuals involved, is to reach out to commissioners or our executive team directly, and all of our contact information is on minneapolisparks.org. We also do not tolerate harassing or discriminatory comments towards anyone, and we just ask that folks keep that in mind when they're addressing the board. So that said, the first speaker that I have is Ellen Van Awarden. Ellen, are you here this evening? Ellen, if you could come forward, state your name, and if you're comfortable, your address for the public record, and then you'll have 2 minutes to address the board, and welcome.
Great, thank you. I'm Ellen Van Iwarden. I live at 2833 East Lake of the Isles Parkway in Minneapolis, and I'm the president of the East Isles Residents Association. And I'm here to thank you all for approving the resolution involving allocating funds from the Park Dedication Fund to a shade structure in Joanne Levin Triangle Park. And a particular thank you to Commissioner Cogill and the park's planning staff for getting us to this happy day where it can begin. The park has been without shade since it lost a tree that had been there since its founding, and it's a top issue for the neighborhood because it is our only playground. So again, thank you. I wanted to ask a question. The resolution says that it is pending approval of the Southwest Service Area Master Plan. And does that mean that the allocation will not happen until the plan is approved?
I should have said one other rule I forgot to mention. The park board does not respond to constituents on the dais. We only listen, but I will refer you to Assistant Superintendent Michael Schroeder, and he can answer that question for you.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have other
Just
continue.
one other comment I would say. If that is the case, this is not a controversial project. Both the initial plans included shade structures, and the new revised plan for the park includes a shade structure. So I'd encourage you to let us begin the planning with the park staff immediately. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And if you want to connect with Assistant Superintendent Schroeder, he can answer that question and talk about next steps with you too. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
My next speaker is Tamara Kaiser. Tamara, if you could state your name, and if you're comfortable, your address for the public record, and you have 2 minutes, and welcome.
Hello, my name is Tamara Kaiser, 3217 Humboldt Avenue South in Minneapolis, and I'm here to express my grave concern about Commissioners Cogill and Meyer's proposal to add mixed-use floors and perhaps residential housing above any park structure. This proposal was floated at the June 12th meeting by Meyer and the June 26th meeting, by both of them at the June 12th meeting and by Meyer at the June 26th meeting and in an NPR story. Citizen Joe Tamburino shared with me his correspondence regarding this proposal with the whole park board and specifically with Commissioners Meyer and Cogill. Regarding the Lola site, Meyer stated to Tamburino what we all know. Our homeless situation is a huge problem, and the U.S. government egregiously stole land from Native Americans, including, of course, the Dakota. He suggested that adding 15 to 20 units for homeless Native Americans would begin to mitigate these injustices. He added that Minneapolis has lost its #1 status as a park system, in large part, he believed, because of new housing in areas without easy access to parks. He has forgotten the enormous amount of construction that has already taken place and continues to take place within a short walking distance of Bede-Makaska, and that, according to our city leaders, will provide affordable housing in that area. Mr. Cogill stated to Tamburino that the community could decide whether these ideas are within the scope of the Park Board's mission. In fact, the mission statement could not be clearer. To quote, "The Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board exists to provide places and recreational opportunities for all people. By definition, private residences exclude the entire rest of the public, including all underserved and populations of color." Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kaiser. I don't have anybody to refer you to because it's not a policy that's under consideration by the board, so I will just refer you and encourage you to continue the dialogue with Commissioners Meyer and Cogill. Eric Storley. Eric, are you here this evening? Eric, if you could come forward and state your name, and if you're comfortable, your address for the public record. You have 2 minutes to address the board, and welcome.
My name is Eric Storley, 3217 Humboldt Avenue South. I'm married to that woman who just spoke. And I thank Jono for meeting with us about last autumn it was to discuss some of these issues. And I'm going to continue her statement. Mr. Meyer pushes for using the airspace above any structure. I object to the idea of adding height on the shores of any lake or in any park. Last spring, my husband and I met with Cowgill and 3 others, 2 Native American citizens and a former member of the Minneapolis and numerous other park boards, a man with deep experience of what it takes to preserve parkland. He insisted on the importance of limiting height around our lakes and waterways. We found that because he doesn't ascribe to the current ruling ideology supporting urban density, he was ignored. In that meeting, Cowgill named access and affordable housing as significant priorities that justify ignoring the Shoreland Overlay District. Both commissioners seem to think that taking advantage of airspace, if the footprint doesn't change, is a neutral act environmentally. However, adding height close to the lake reduces airflow from our northwest winds, it warms lake waters, it adds to the growth of algae in the water, it negatively affects those who use the lake for recreational purposes, such as sailing and swimming and windboarding. Such height in any park would negate the positive cooling effect of current tree canopies. Thus, adding height again violates the following part of the mission statement. The Minneapolis Park and Rec Board shall permanently preserve, protect, maintain, improve, and enhance its natural resources for current and future generations. Thank you very much. If you want to add height, I notice you could go up about 10 stories on top of this building for all sorts of residents, right next to the river, access to parkland. We don't have to mess with the lakes. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Our next speaker is Sean Conity. Sean, if you could state your name, and if you're comfortable, your address for the public record. You have 2 minutes, and welcome.
Hello, Commissioners. Thank you so much. Sean Conity, Friends of Lake Hiawatha, 4053 23rd Avenue South, Minneapolis. So first I'm going to get to my asks because I don't have enough time. So I'm going to go right to the end, which is, and it's regarding Lake Hiawatha. We ask you to expedite and prioritize the mitigation of the North Pipe in the forthcoming reconfiguration of the parkland surrounding Lake Hiawatha. These necessary infrastructure changes should take priority in planning and implementation and should occur without any further delay and should not be tied to debate over 9 or 18 holes of golf. We ask you to contribute also to the cleanup efforts at Lake Hiawatha with a new staff member dedicated to picking up trash until a comprehensive system of mitigation can be put in place at the North Pipe. Thank you so much. And I have a portion of trash for you. And so I just completed an exhibition and it's on display at the Minneapolis College of Art and Design. And its purpose is to find out who is responsible for cleaning up the trash at Lake Hiawatha. And we found that it was the producer, meaning the corporations, the consumer who purchase and dispose of the materials often improperly, and the municipalities, which is the city and in this case the park board. And you also have the stated responsibility to keep the parkland free of trash. But I consider you all allies, and I support the work that you're doing. And this gift is not meant as for you as individual persons, but as representatives of the Minneapolis Park Board, who does have that responsibility to keep trash out of the lake.
Thank you, Sean. You can give our gift to Ms. Summers. Oh, perfect. She will. She and Jennifer will distribute it to us. Thank you, Sean. Our next speaker is Mike Erlinson. Mike, are you here this evening? Mike, welcome. If you could state your name and if you're comfortable, your address for the public record, and you have 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's a tough act to follow. Mike Erlinson, 2809 East Lake of Dalles Parkway, Minneapolis. Thank you guys for taking a couple minutes, and I just wanted to echo Ellen's appreciation for the fact that you passed the resolution that Commissioner Cowgill brought forward, 251. We appreciate that. We also appreciate Commissioner Forney, who's worked with us on our neighborhood association. I'm also a member of the East Isles Residents Association. And our biggest problem in the East Isles Residents Association is probably trying to spend our NRP funds, which is maybe a nice problem to have. And what we've been trying to do diligently over the last several years is spend those funds on enhancements in the park. The largest asset in the park in the community is our parks, and so this shade structure that we just talked about, that you guys approved, again, I would echo Ellen's desire that we fast track that. The Neighborhood Association has already talked about putting additional funds towards that project if in fact the $40,000 isn't enough to make that the kind of structure that that park would need. We have been working with park board staff to try to put some chess tables on the mall, for example, which is a wonderfully unutilized park in our neighborhood that now features the East Isles Farmers Market. We appreciate the partnership with the park board on that farmers market, and we're working hard to make it a success, not just for the community, but for the park as well. Things are going well. I think the first night we had over 1,000 people attend, so that was a pretty good way to start. We were pretty proud of the fact that we helped fix up the warming house. We've planted a bunch of trees on the mall. We've replaced park benches. We've added 6 or 7 park benches through Mark Addix's program. And so I guess any way that the commission can help the staff find the courage that they need to help us spend our money on making the parks better in East Isles, we would certainly appreciate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Our next speaker is Jeff Barnhart. Jeff, if you would state your name and if you're comfortable, your address for the public record. You have 2 minutes and welcome.
My name's Jeff Barnhart. I'm with Prospect Park Properties. We office in the Prospect Park neighborhood of southeast Minneapolis. I was born and raised in Minneapolis on Xerxes Avenue in North Minneapolis, right on Victor Memorial Parkway, so I'm very familiar with the city, and I went to the U of M. I spent all my time here. The last 10 years, though, I've been managing and developing our family real estate in the neighborhood of Prospect Park, and so if you've been there in the last 5 years, you're probably going to see a boom of development, including a grocery store, a hotel, affordable housing, senior living complex. And so I'm here today basically to thank you guys and thanks to Kerry Christensen and Michael Schroeder for getting us to this point, because we have the opportunity to help basically Towerside Park become a reality. And if it wasn't for the park board and its staff being supportive of this and allowing the park dedication fees that we've created on our development projects to go back into the neighborhood where all this dense development is coming. So there's just there's a lot of fun, exciting stuff going on, and I'm blessed to be in the spot, standing in front of you, thanking you here, and I hope that you guys are fine approving the purchase agreement so we can proceed with getting Towerside Park a reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Our next speaker is Julia Venata. Julia, if you would state your name and if you're comfortable, your address for the public record. You have 2 minutes to address the board, and welcome.
Hi, my name is Julia Venata, 3408 39th Avenue in the Longfellow community. And I'm here to thank the board for your unanimous support of Resolution 2019256, approving the Mississippi Gorge Regional Park Master Plan, particularly keeping the Windshield Trail pedestrian only in perpetuity. Also, to thank you for the process of allowing community to be heard with our concerns on the impact of mountain bike trails and how they might hurt the fragile ecosystem, which I hope we can continue to protect from anything but passive recreational use for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. My next speaker is Dell Hampton. Dell, are you here? Dell, welcome. If you would come forward and state your name, and if you're comfortable, your address for the public record. You have 2 minutes to address the board. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and good evening, everybody. My name is Dell Hampton. I'm a 20-year resident of Prospect Park, and my address is 125 Cecil Street Southeast. I'm the coordinator of the Prospect Park Community Gardens. I am the interim executive director of the Towerside Innovation District, and I was a member of the East of the River Master Planning Community Advisory Committee. I'm here to speak in favor of Towerside Park, and I want to thank Jeff because you saved me some time with some of your credits. This has been part of a strategic plan for the Towerside Innovation District for years. We wanted to have a signature green space in the park, and so we've been working towards that. It's been an incremental process where I was invited to put a community garden in that space just so that they could show how you could build a signature green space that was a gathering spot for the community. And so we've had Harvest Fest there, we've had produce that's been shared by the gardeners and given to food shelves and so on. And so it's been a productive use of the space up to this time. And as we did our planning with the East of the River Master Planning process, the community weighed in heavily and said that we would like to make this a signature green space that included a fair amount of community garden space. And so that's what the design reflects, and we wholeheartedly support that. We are looking forward to activating that space and fully utilizing that space once it's in, so that we will have events there, and we will, all kinds of events that we'll have there to make sure that the space is well used. We're using innovative and out-of-the-box thinking to make this happen. We're using parkland dedication fee. It has a strong community garden presence. And there's all kinds of ways where we've used innovation to make this happen, and we would appreciate your support in continuing that. Also wanted to echo some of the thank yous in addition to Carrie Christensen and Michael Schroeder. Perkins and Will has been our designer. We've worked with some great people there. Commissioner Meyer, thank you for your support. Clean Curry, it was her vision when she first purchased the property to make sure that we had a green space there, and I want to thank her. And then Jeff Barnhart from Prospect Park Properties, who's been a huge supporter of us all this time and carrying a lot of the financial burden. So thank you, everybody, for making this happen.
Thank you, Dell. Is there anybody that signed up whose name I did not call? Seeing none, I am closing open time. I believe Commissioner Chair Forney, we're on 2019-258.
I'd like to move Resolution 2019-258, resolution approving the agreement between the Mississippi Watershed Management Organization, the City of Minneapolis, the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board regarding the cooperative effort to prepare designs for stormwater BMPs on the northern section of Columbia Golf Course within the One Northeast watershed located within the City of Minneapolis.
2019-258 has been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on 2019-258? Seeing none, I just have a couple of very quick questions for Mr. Swenson or Mr. Schroeder. Cliff, if you could come forward. I think this kind of goes to a couple of points that Commissioner Forney has brought up at different points, and I might be putting you on the spot a little bit, but the Minneapolis Park Board currently retains and deals with more stormwater than we allow to run off from our impervious surfaces. Is that correct on a pretty broad level?
President Bourne, your question is referring to just the amount of stormwater that comes onto parkland from other spaces, other than we would generate?
Correct.
Yes, that would be correct.
Okay. Can you talk just a little bit about what the the frameworks of the cooperative agreement will look like? Is there any potential for remuneration for the Minneapolis Park Board in terms of like our stormwater management fee for the entire city? Because it seems like we're going to be expanding our capacity to take we're going to set aside part of our land to take even more and have a greater capacity to deal with stormwater from throughout the city.
President Bourne, of course, this agreement deals strictly with Columbia Park and Columbia Park Golf Course. The intention here with stormwater is, yes, there is flooding that already occurs within the northern part of Columbia Golf Course. The intention with this cooperative agreement is that the city has identified that there's flooding. MWMO has identified that they would like to do something about increase ecological habitat as well as water quality. And we as a park board would like to build more resiliency into golf course play at Columbia. So even though this agreement, this work that we're doing in Columbia doesn't necessarily affect the entire park system, I think staff feel it's a positive step forward in working with the city for them to come on board and help us build resiliency in our parks that related to stormwater that comes from city streets. I will also just add that for us to say that, we are going to, in essence, if I simplify by saying we're going to stop taking stormwater into our parks, there'd be a lot of unhappy people.
Right.
And for years, right, we've been, and President Board, you've been part of that, and other members as well, saying, hey, we have to do something here. We're taking the brunt of the stormwater. And again, I just reiterate that I think this agreement is a good step forward to work positively with the city to solve a problem we have, but also to take some acknowledgement, some funds to do that work. Because again, the discussion we're having at this point, we're in design, you're approving the ability for us to go through design. When we've talked about funding, what we're bringing to the table is our expertise in golf course design. But funding for replacement of the park and replacement of the pipe and other stormwater BMPs will come from other funding sources, not from the park board.
Okay, but there's no conversation in dealing with stormwater in Northeast Minneapolis about like replacing all of Central Avenue with a pervious surface, for example. So there's water coming from Central Avenue into Columbia, right?
President Bourne, yes, in some portions of that, within that 1NE watershed that we had a map of, yes, there's portions that flow through the northern portion of Columbia. And you're right, their work is not necessarily along Central, but when they look at the stormwater improvements that the city that is, are looking at stormwater improvements within the city streets, that's, I'll call it, on the upside of, or on the high side of the watershed, 1NE watershed, they're looking at ways to mitigate that pavement, tree trenches, other below grade infiltration areas. So they're looking to implement BMPs into their street redesigns and reconstructs. The thing for us to also understand is that with stormwater in a fully urban, built-out environment like we're in, there is not one simple solution. Mm-hmm. We can't dig a deeper hole. That's not how it works. So we have to use a series of small components to help mitigate it. I think the big thing for us, and we should recognize the fact that if we can build resiliency into that golf course so we can continue to play even in a 100-year storm event, we'll be successful at Columbia. That's how staff has viewed this.
Thank you, Mr. Swenson. Commissioner Musich.
Thank you, President Bourne. Mr. Swenson, before you sit down, sorry I was not quick enough. We've had a lot of questions recently about stormwater and what the city is doing regarding stormwater. I recently attended a watershed partners meeting where the city presented in depth about their work to build resiliency into our stormwater system here in the city, utilizing not only city-owned public land, but also private land, parkland, and working with additional partners to achieve those goals. Would we perhaps be able to have them come and give that presentation to this board so that we're all sitting up here with a better understanding of the bigger picture in the city in regards to stormwater?
President Board, Commissioner Musich, yes, we can talk to them and ask them to come make that presentation. We did have staff that attended a portion of that, so yes, we'll reach out to Surface Water and Sewers and see if we can get them to come in here. So.
Okay, lovely. And I don't know what committee that would be appropriate in. I'd be happy to host it in mine if necessary. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on 2019-258? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the resolution carries. Moving on to petitions and communications. I will start with Commissioner Forney. Or, excuse me, Commissioner Musich. I've done that twice tonight.
I started first last time. Can I go last?
You can go last next time. Thank you.
I'll pass, I guess.
Thank you, Commissioner Musich. Commissioner Forney.
Okay, Minneapolis Pops Orchestra reached out to me. Next year, they will be celebrating their 80th year playing in the parks. And being I had been very involved with them when I was with People for Parks as the president, et cetera, they are applying for a grant to publish the history of the Pops. And I'm very excited about that. We, the Park Board, have played a very, very critical role in their history. We used to fund them completely, and now they have broken off and started their own 501c3 and do fundraising for their own parks, which are playing all over the city. So I'm very excited about that, and I hope that we can participate in that history as far as making sure that people get it. And I've received a great deal of emails about the Minnehaha Parkway potential redo, and also about an area called the Reserve 40. I just want to encourage people that these are master plans and they have not closed yet as far as your public comments, so please get those in. Nothing is completely set and done, so your comments are really appreciated. This morning I attended the Friends of the Lock and Dams Upper Lock Coalition meeting, number 4, I believe. The design principles were discussed. It's a very, very exciting group of people that are passionately wanting to activate that area. And how it evolves from being industrial to, and when the lock and dam was utilized. And I've encouraged Assistant Superintendent Schroeder to have them bring a proposal, or not proposal, presentation to us, and to understand all of the things that are bubbling up in that area for all of us to have a greater understanding, because it really is the future is amazing and excites me. So a few people had asked me there at that meeting also about our appointments to the St. Anthony Falls Heritage Board meeting, which is next Monday, and it sounds like there's still some limbo on that. And to me, these are really critical boards. Obviously, that particular one is, important to me. But most importantly is that we're all assigned to these different boards, and I hope that we all take them seriously. But I also would encourage everybody to report back to us during petitions and communications. I'm not aware of what's going on with the Youth Coordinating Board. I read in the newspaper about the Planning Commission, the denial of the Fed ramp. Those are things that I think all of us should be informed about from the source, instead of us just reading it in the newspaper. So I take mine very seriously, and I hope that all of you will, and I look forward to your reports. And I guess the thing that is more important to me is that if you don't have anything to report back, I think we need to start questioning, are these appointments, are these boards relevant to the Park Board? And therefore, should we be continuing, or how can we make them relevant to us? It's a two-way street. So I hope that we will continue to talk about that. A few people commented to me that at our last meeting, we approved the amicus brief regarding the naming, or the non-naming, however I should say it, with the DNR, and that there is confusion once again about names. In that resolution, we refer to Lake Bede-Makaska, Lake with a capital L, and so I just feel like this naming is becoming very confusing for people. President Bourne and Commissioner French and I, as well as Assistant Superintendent Schroeder, were at a Linden Hills meeting, and they offered that is there a way that they can assist homeowners around the area if and when we do change that. And like I say, there is confusion. I myself am going through the process of changing my email address, and there's like over 100 contacts that I've made so far. And I just hope that we will be very cognizant of the consistency, or shall I say the lack of consistency that's happening there. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Forney. Commissioner French.
I want to invite everybody out tomorrow. There will be, it's actually today. What's the date of the Full Service Community School Town Hall? So I was just want folks to come out and get more information and questions about the town hall, about full service community schools. Other than that, I don't really have too much to say.
Thank you, Commissioner French. Commissioner Colgill.
Thank you, President Bourne, and thank you, Commissioner Forney, for the reminder to provide an update. Since this is my first opportunity, but I'm very happy to do so. We did have a relatively contentious Planning Commission meeting regarding a proposal for, on Monday, regarding a proposal for a parking garage on the Federal Reserve site. It's my opinion that, it was the way I voted, that there was not enough that they could do to alleviate the fact that this is just not something that deserves to be right along our riverfront, nor does it deserve to be something that is going to be in perpetuity for the next 30 years in a city that's changing and becoming much less reliant on cars. And looking at the applications that they provided, I had to agree with staff. So that issue is very close. I understand that the Federal Reserve will be appealing to the City Council, and we'll see how that goes. That said, as I said at the meeting on Monday night, I really do appreciate the work that the Fed did with staff. I had a meeting with them as well around improvements to the space. There was a lot of greening elements and thought that they put into that, but in the end, looking at the long-term vision for that site and the requested variances that they were asking for, conditional use permit, it wasn't enough to allow for such a use. So that is my update there. I don't think we did approve some lighting for Falwell Park, I believe, as well, some higher lights. So that'll be good for the north side, I hope. Those are, I think, the only two items that we addressed at Planning Commission that are pertinent to parks. Other updates, I would like to thank my fellow commissioners for support of the shade structure, and also I would like to say that staff has been really helpful in working, as I've mentioned for the last couple of months, my interest in working on phasing out single-use plastics in different capacities throughout the park system. Staff has been really fantastic in being proactive about that, and we look forward to hopefully having something for the park board to review in the coming months on that item. I think it's really important, and I just appreciate everybody's willingness to go above and beyond and think about how we can push ourselves to be leaders in that environmental field. And then lastly, we approved a variety of contracts today in consent regarding the Waterworks project. We'll also be discussing this later on tonight, the Waterworks project as it pertains to the Minneapolis Parks Foundation's funding agreement, and just really excited to see this getting underway. It appears that Commissioner Meyer and I might yet see parkways blocked off this summer, even though it was not from our original intent, but the West River Parkway will certainly be blocked off for construction in different phases as we see this really fulcrum point of the River First Vision being realized. So thanks for everybody's work on that as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Colgill. Commissioner Meyer?
Pass.
Thank you, Commissioner Meyer. Commissioner Vitak?
Thank you, President Bourne. First thing is, tomorrow is the end of the safety camp, at North Commons Park. They have over 100 participants, the largest group of kids of color in the history of the safety camp. It's pretty awesome. They're gonna have a barbecue at noon tomorrow at the Worth Beach, so I invite all my fellow commissioners to come and join me over there tomorrow, noon, Worth Beach. Also, the parks are, MPRB's collaborated with some libraries, schools, and community centers and have launched a Summer Eats program. I believe there's an app that you can download. I'm sorry, I don't have the, the app address, but there's an app that you can download to find out where kids can go and have meals this summer, free meals this summer at participating recreation centers, community centers, schools, and libraries. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Commissioner Vita. I will be really brief. I just wanted to make commissioners aware that we received a request from the Friends of the Lock and Dam to sign on to a letter to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission opposing Crown Hydro's renewal of their FERC license. I received the letter sometime in the afternoon on Monday, which was after our deadline to submit things for the agenda. It's a rather, it's about a 3-page letter, so I didn't want to just send it out to commissioners and ask for that consideration. That said, I've reviewed the letter and it's very consistent with our consistently stated policies over the previous decade. There was a request that the letter is time sensitive. I am going to reach out to the Friends of the Lock and Dam and ask what their deadline is for it. And if time will allow, I will bring it forward at our next meeting in July. If time will not allow, it's my intention to sign the letter in the capacity of my own office. If any commissioners have would like to consider a substantial policy change in our position around Crown Hydro over the last decade, if you could please let Secretary Ringgold know by Tuesday the 16th, and then I will hold off on signing that letter on behalf of the Park Board in the capacity of my office. But it's my instinct from the conversations with all of you over the past couple of years that we are not changing our position on Crown Hydro. But if there's anybody that wants to bring that forward for a discussion, if you can let Secretary Ringgold know by the 16th, I'll hold off on the signature on that letter. That's all that I have. I am recessing the full board. Chair French, I believe, is up.
Time being 6:11, I'd like to call the Recreational Committee to order. Secretary, can you take the roll?
Commissioner Forney.
Here.
Commissioner Musich.
Present.
Vice Chair Severson.
Present.
Chair French.
I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the agenda. All in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstain? Okay. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes from Wednesday, June 26, 2019.
So moved.
All in favor of approving the minutes from June 26, 2019, say aye.
Aye.
All not approving, say no. No abstentions? Cool. We have a study item today, and I believe Assistant Superintendent Therese Cox will be coming and talking to us about full-service community schools.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you, Chair French. I am just going to bring to you tonight our very brief standing update on full-service community schools and its implementation. So again, background for, just to jog your memory, the purpose of full-service community schools is to really provide the supports that young people need so that they can thrive in their academic setting. So full-service community schools really thinks about how do we support social-emotional learning, their recreational needs, mental and physical health. Again, kids that are healthy and whole tend to thrive more in school and do better. This initiative is a partnership between the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board and the Minneapolis Public Schools. Through this partnership, we will continue to build on the relationship that we already have, deepen our work, and again, serve more deeply the students at specifically with the Mary McLeod Bethune Elementary. So through this relationship, our work will be around developing partnerships. So the full service community school model looks at who are the organizations, the service providers in the community that can help meet the needs of students and families. And I say students and families because we know that kids who come to school with families who may have some instability, who may have unmet needs. Those unmet needs gets transferred to children. They show up in schools with needing lots of supports and services. And so our work will be to look at what are the needs that exist, who are the partners in the community that can help serve those. And what we set out to look for were programs or partners that serve school-age children and their adult caregivers for the reasons I just explained, who can support us in improving academic outcomes, expand and support self-efficacy for families. So how do we support families in getting their legs under them, helping them understand what steps they need to take forward so again they can support themselves and their children. Schools who have a higher amount of family engagement tend to do better both in creating community for the students that attend the school, but also you see a higher academic outcomes as well. So that'll be part of our work. We also want to make sure that both parks and the school are seen as the center of the community, the places where you go when you want to understand what's happening around you, the gathering space for the community when you need to discuss important issues, or places that you go that you feel both trusted and valued in that space. So that's where we started back in January when we first kind of launched the planning work. We have since refined down to some desired outcomes, what we intend to accomplish and measure at the end of the academic year. How we'll increase out-of-school time programming, how we will increase family and community engagement, and how we will increase community health and wellness programs. And that's not just for the students and families that are associated with the school, but the surrounding community. Again, making sure that people feel connected to the school and the park and that they are the centers of the community. So this is not a super visually appealing slide, but this is the budget for the year. I want to remind us that this was a planning year. And so what you will see in front of you is that we are just about 50% on the wages for the project, and we have not spent any of the not much of the supply money for the project because it's still planning, but when we return to school in September, that's when we'll start to see some of those dollars being expended. So what have we done during this planning year to lay the groundwork? We have done a variety of things. One, to start to develop and strengthen a relationship with the principal. And before I get into that, I'd like to note that we have been really strategic and methodical about how we do that. For those of you who are familiar with school climate and personality, you know that initiatives that come from the outside can either be successful or killed by school staff. And what I mean by that, if you don't take the time necessary to help them feel a part of the project, to help them understand the why of it, and help them understand that it actually will help them, you are kind of at their mercy. And this is not to take shots at school staff, but it's an acknowledgement that they are already stressed. They already have lots on their plate that they're already doing. And so if you don't bring them along, you kind of lose their support right away. And so it's really important that you take the time to do that well, which I believe we've done. We have been attending staff meetings, helping them to understand the project. We've been soliciting their input. We've been trying to help them understand what this means for them, where they fit into it, that it's not happening to them, but they are as much a part of the process as anyone else, and that their voice is critical in this. We have done needs assessments both with the staff and with parents, and we've even asked children, some of the students, what do you see that your school community needs? How can this project support you? We've attended town hall meetings, one at Central back in June. Chair French referenced the one that was this afternoon at Sumner Library. we have started to draft our data sharing agreement. And so the data sharing agreement really lays out how we'll be able to access information about students and families so that we can hear directly from them, we can invite them to events and meetings and support them without being in breach of any data privacy information that the district has. We've already set out to start meeting with potential partners, understanding what services are out there in the community, again, how to support students and families. We are developing a contract with Phyllis Wheatley Community Center, who we laid out from the very beginning would be one of our anchor partners, given that, one, proximity, they are in an adjoining building. And they also serve many of some of their core work is some of the needs that go unmet for families. So they do some anger management work. They do some personal development work, life skill development. They do some a little bit of housing and early childhood work. And so, as we talked about back in January, or perhaps even prior, that they were an ideal partner. And so we are doing a contract with them to expand their ability to provide mental health support, again, which is a much needed service in a variety of communities, particularly in communities that already have other sorts of social and economic challenges. We also started to draft the school-wide family engagement plan with the principal, understanding what his goals are, what does family engagement look like, what would he like to see happen with and for his families, and what steps we need to take, not just month by month, not just planning for conferences, but mapping out the entire year so that we give ourselves enough time to market, to recruit, and to support families in attending events should they need that. So this is the entire project's planning timeline. So we are following the same timeline as Minneapolis Public Schools. And so what you will see in front of you is a list of activities that have either already happened or that are slated to come up in the coming weeks. I don't think that I mentioned to you that the budget that we have developed really mirrors Minneapolis Public's budget. So where they are PPE as parent participatory evaluation, where they're paying parents to go out and do peer-to-peer engagement, solicit information from other parents. We have added that to our budget so that we are kind of lockstep with them as well. We have added some research and evaluation dollars since we don't have our own REA team. And MPS's team is a fee-for-service department, and so we would need to pay for any evaluation that we would need so that we are kind of tracking and measuring the same things. So our hiring process, the coordinator position is posted. It closes on the 17th. We already have the interview dates mapped out in advance, and I have asked I've already invited well in advance the interview panel. So that would be the Bethune principal, and the reason for that is the relationship that will happen most closely. So making sure that this is a person that can work with the principal, that understands his goals and desires for the project is really important. So I wanted to make sure that he is on the panel, asking for a different perspective, asking the executive director, Phyllis Wheatley. And then also making sure that we are tracking with Minneapolis Public Schools. I've asked them to serve on the panel as well. So just a few photos from some of the events that we attended. We attended, and these were taken by our staff, so we invited our staff to come out and make sure that we are capturing some of these moments and some of the work that we're doing. Phyllis Wheatley celebrated Bethune celebrated their 50th anniversary in their current location, the school did. I won't tell you which staff, but we have, working for the park board, one of the original students that made that transfer to the new building. And I'll say she talks about what the move was like, about legit taking your books and your chair and walking over to the new space. And so it's kind of fun to have someone on our staff share that history with the school and talk about what her experience was like early on. During this event, We supported the event by providing food for families, making sure that we know that people who are breaking bread together feel more in community, and so that was one of our gifts to that event. Also making sure that we had resources available, both that exist in the park board, some of our services, and also what families can expect out of the full-service community school. So we tabled there and made sure that we were shaking hands, getting to know parents and grandparents and all of that, and making ourselves available to them. This isn't a picture of the principal and our detailed staff on that same day. And then these are pictures of track and field day at Bethune. And the reason this is significant is, again, trying to make sure that we integrate ourselves into the school community. We are attending their events and being a part of what they're doing. I think I've mentioned to you, and I'm sorry I can't quote you the percentage right now, but Bethune has a pretty significant number of special ed students, some higher needs students. And so one of the things that we did, we brought our sensory tent out to track and field so that kids who need to take a break get to do that, but also get to participate in the activities, just like all of the typical kids. If you are familiar with the unfortunate part of special ed, a lot of times kids who have special needs are segregated from the activities for a variety of reasons. And we wanted to make sure that with the resources that we have, that we could help them be a part of that. And so this is some of the work that we did on that day with some of those kids. And just a couple of other pictures of kids doing kids stuff. Our staff being out there with them and engaging with kids and staff. That is the end of the presentation.
Are there any questions from, okay, Commissioner Vito?
Thank you, Commissioner French. Thank you for the lovely presentation, Assistant Superintendent Cox. I get questions about full-service schools, and usually I'll ask you, but sometimes you're not available. So this answers a lot of the questions I've most recently had. But I just wanted to know how we're doing compared to the other sites. And there's 2 other sites, correct?
Chair French, Commissioner Vitaw, thank you for the question. That's actually a really good question. Yes, there are 2 other sites, one of them being Green Central and the other being City View. I would say to you that how we compare to the other sites, and I'm not sure I understand your question. If your question is around our planning process or services, but I'll start with the former. I believe that we are right on pace with where we should be. So we started, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, laying some really solid groundwork back in January. Both myself and our detailed staff. So I have met with the current and or former superintendents of long-time full-service community schools in this area. So everyone talks about Keith Lester, who was the former superintendent in Brooklyn Center. I know him really well. We have a great working relationship, so thankfully he takes my call. And I sat with him, tell me what I need to know. Where are the potholes? What should I, if I'm not doing this in this timing, what are my risks? And that was a great opportunity for me to learn from him. Same thing with one of the early full-service schools in St. Paul, met with that assistant superintendent to do some of that similar kinds of learning. So to answer your question, I think we are right on pace. I think that we're gaining the trust of the staff and most significantly of the principal. As I mentioned, things can live or die there, right? And I think he believes in what we're bringing to his school and wants to work with us. So I think we're doing just fine.
Thank you. You answered my question.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, Commissioner Caldwell.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Chair French. I'm not on the committee. I appreciate you acknowledging me. This is great. I really appreciate the rundown. And I guess my question has to do with the partnership in terms of just logistics. Are the schools willing to let the staff that we hire use their copy machines, their break rooms, come into the school at all? Is that still being worked out, that piece? Is it different school to school, and how are you finding that process?
Chair French, Commissioner Cogill, in ordinary circumstances, it is school by school. I am grateful for the relationship that we are developing or have developed with Principal Johnson. I am confident that we will have to contribute to some of the supports in the school. So buying copy paper, I do not anticipate that he will create barriers. He sees our work as an asset to him and his school community. I think we laid out the structure of it. The position will report to me with a dotted line to the manager of the project over with Minneapolis Public Schools. And the reason I want to have a dotted line is because I want to make sure that the position has a learning community that they're a part of, that they are sharing best practices together, that they are doing professional development together, and that they stay current on any pivots or changes that MPS may have along the way. So,
Great, that's fantastic. I feel like just that little piece of being able to feel like you're part of the larger educational team coming in. I used to be a coordinator at a variety of schools in San Francisco, and it took a while, and it was a very important aspect of being able to do the work well, to be able to feel welcome in the space and to feel like you can use the space and the other teachers, etc. So glad to hear that the principals are coming around to being supportive of that, and the more we can do, the better.
Thank you.
So, thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Cogill. Commissioner Forney.
Thank you, Chair French. I can't remember, it's been a couple years since we had this discussion, I think. There was a lot of, I'll say, barriers around the fact that the confidentiality of a student could not be shared. There are certain confidential things that couldn't be shared about students. We found some sort of way to overcome that.
Commissioner French, Chair French, Commissioner Forney. So, yes, and so in student data record databases, you can segment information. So clearly there will be some things that we won't have access to, and nor do we need it. So based on our scope of work, they can turn on and off particular features so that we can contact families.
Okay.
But we may not be able to see the student's health record. We may not need that, and that's all right, because what we really need is we need to know how to invite Timmy's mom to school conferences. How do we ask her if she needs support in getting there? That's what we need. We don't need to know if he's missed school for 17 days because of some medical situation. And so the short answer is yes, there is a way to do that, and that's through the data sharing agreement that I referenced as part of our groundwork work.
And I think some of it was coming from, like, if a child is, how do I say it, having issues, whatever, and how we can make it seamless that child has the needed, care, that particular issue is how it's manifesting itself, I guess is the thing. Are we able to share some of those types of things? I'm just vaguely remembering that was one of the hurdles that we had, and I just wondered if there was a way that we've been able to do that somewhat seamlessly, like what you just indicated.
So, Commissioner Forney, if I'm tracking with you, I think what you're asking about is this idea that was floated at Department of Ed, an idea called My Backpack, which means it was a model where a kid, no matter where they went in social services, in recreation, and programs, their background kind of followed them, so that you're not starting over with a child at each stop. That didn't really get legs, and so, but through this project, a person, the position will have access to some information. Now, our data sharing agreement will not allow for us to share a child's data with athletics or with aquatics, but what this position will have access to a limited amount of information that's relevant to the work they're doing.
Awesome. No, I like that. That's good clarity, and in some ways, the sensitivity that we have too much information, with too many staff members and everything, it can, be too much. And then you said something about special needs children. Are we, my nephew is Down syndrome, and he was in the Minneapolis, he was, what's it called, mainstreamed, and he had so many, what should we say, he had a lot of opportunities. And I'm wondering, so are we going to be working with special needs kids? Because they come with a lot of opportunities. So, I mean.
Commissioner Forney, this project is not a direct service, direct service work. What we will be doing is we will be seeking out organizations, agencies, or opportunities that do direct service work, so to ensure that kids have access to more things, both during their school day and during out of school time.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm very excited about it all.
President Moore.
Thank you, Commissioner or Chair French. And thank you, Assistant Superintendent Cox. I'm excited to hear this report, and it sounds very much like we're going to be ready to go at the beginning of this coming school year. Is that correct?
President Bourne, that is absolutely accurate. We will have our person in their seat before school starts.
Okay. I just want, is having the person in the seat the same as ready to start delivering services?
Sorry, Chair French, President Bourne, I believe that is, so the groundwork is being laid, which is why we're already meeting with partners, assessing what partners are working well. We are starting to schedule existing partner meetings to say, is this still the work that you should be doing? Should we be asking more of you, asking less of you? So I'm confident that services will be delivered right on time.
Okay. Well, thank you. And I know that this has been, there's been a lot of bureaucracies to navigate to get us going and to get us on track, and it's critically important. I do want to just share a couple of concerns to make sure that they're on our collective radar. The first is just kind of the filling the seat, and I know that there is, and I know we detailed somebody in, so we had somebody in, I think January 1. I have kind of backward-looking concern of what at the park board suffered there, and I don't know if that's a question for you or for Director Wiseman or for Superintendent Bangora, but the recommended budget had two very critically needed positions, one in community outreach and one to get our full service community schools initiative going with the school board. And we have been one critically talented, or one very talented person down. And I know that we had said in earlier conversations that community outreach does have kind of a lull at the beginning of the year, but we're already, with the job just being posted yesterday, we're in the midst of our busy season. So I have to imagine that either community outreach or the Park School Campus Initiative or both are suffering because we don't have, and I'm sure they're both meeting expectations, but I just wonder how much more they could be doing. And then just from a budgetary standpoint, those are two positions that are around $60,000 to $80,000 plus fringe, where I guess I would be looking for, and I understand that we do some management through attrition and vacancies, but I would be looking for what was one of the highest priorities of the board last year to fill and to be implemented. I would just wonder where $69,000 to $82,000 for the first 6 months, which will probably be 7 months, if not 8, depending on when that person starts, where in the organization that has gone. And I think I may be asking the Board of Commissioners to look for if we can have one person doing two jobs effectively and we're not suffering, then I've got to wonder which one of those isn't isn't needed. And I think that's, I don't expect you to have an answer right now because it's two divisions, so I won't put you on the spot. But I'm very happy that we're going to be ready to start serving youth and families in this partnership, but I'm left with some hard questions that if we have been able to do without this community outreach position for what will probably be 8 or 9 months. One, where in the organization is the funding for that, and two, is that a position that's needed in the 2019 or in the 2020 budget? The other concern that I have too is and that I just want us to be very aware of, and I don't know what the right answer is for this, but I was a program coordinator at Phyllis Wheatley, and I worked very closely with Bethune staff and Commissioner Cogill, and you are exactly right. It does take time to build up those relationships. So I do have a little bit of concern if we're putting somebody in that seat a few days, a few weeks before the school year starts, that there is going to be, if that's somebody other than the detailed position, that person is starting a lot of those relationships over again. And if it's not that detailed, if it is that detailed position, our community outreach department has that same issue with bringing in somebody brand new that is doing a lot of critical work. So Superintendent Bangora, I know that this is like, you had started in February. The board dedicates, and we do allow some vacancy management in our budget, but there are just high priority positions of the board, and these are two of them, and I think the community has been underserved by only having one person in those two positions for the last 7 months, and it will now probably be 8 or 9. So thank you for all of the work that has been happening, and I just want to make sure that we're serving our community to the level that we're promising them at through our budget process. So thank you, Assistant Superintendent.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, I guess I have a couple questions. Was this position posted internally or externally, or both?
It is, Chair French, it is posted both. I don't think there are many instances in recreation where we do any internal-only postings.
Okay. Is there a way I can get a link to that so I can send that out to certain people? Yeah, that's right. Oh, okay, never mind. I just want to say thank you to you and your staff. This has been a tremendous lift. This is something new, and anytime you bring something new, people are always going to say, I don't know about that. So you've had a tough road to hoe, and I really appreciate all the work that you've done, and appreciate the staff that you've had the opportunity to work with and bring aboard. How's the coordination between? I don't know if this question has really been addressed already. How's the coordination? If there's been any friction between the schools and the parks, and what that friction is, and if it is, how can we as commissioners help out?
Chair French, interesting question. So I will answer this way. My MPS counterpart is Karen DeVette. We have a very strong working relationship in all things MPS, MPRB. So we kind of start there. We problem solve through a variety of things that affect both of our organizations, and I don't see any difference in that. The Superintendent Bangora, along with Superintendent Graff. See, I go back a little ways. A couple superintendents ago. Superintendent Graff, we meet regularly as well to think through what's working, what isn't. But as it relates to this, I would say there was a lot of unknowns, right? And so as you think about developing any relationship, there's a little bit of a dance, some growing pains that you have to work through. And from my position, I think we have been ticking through things as we need to. We've gotten to a few places where like, hadn't thought about that. But we figure it out and we keep moving.
I think this is just a great opportunity for our community to do something really special. And if we do a really good job with these 3 sites, especially our site as a park board site, maybe we can maybe be hiring 2 or 3 more folks in a couple of years. So thank you very much, Assistant Superintendent Cox.
Thank you.
I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor of adjourning the Recreation Committee, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
The time being 6:43, I would like to call the order the Administration and Finance Committee. Will the Secretary please take the roll?
Commissioner French.
Here.
Commissioner Severson.
Here.
Vice Chair Cogill.
Here.
Chair Vitoff.
Here.
You have a quorum.
I would ask for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
All those in favor of approval of the agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, abstentions? A motion for approval of the minutes from Wednesday, June 26, 2019.
So moved.
All those in favor of approval of the minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, abstentions? The motion passes. We have one action item.
I will move resolution 2019-272, a resolution acknowledging Minneapolis Parks Foundation full attainment of fundraising commitment for the mezzanine phase of the Waterworks project as described in River First Fundraising Agreement Number 1 and suspending board policy and procedure to approve the names of 6 features within the project, including the Waterworks Pavilion, the Lensmeyer Family Foundation Classroom, the General Mills Plaza, Bank of America City Steps, Nature Play Lab by Carolyn Amplatz, and Richard M. Schultz Family Foundation Atrium.
Any discussion? Commissioner Cogill?
Sure. I don't know if I have much discussion. I want to say thank you to the Parks Foundation and to staff. This represents a big step in our continued work in realizing the Waterworks vision. And as I said earlier in petitions and communications, we're getting there, and we just greatly appreciate the partnership. It is just a testament to continued vision and continued support to reactivate this space in a way that is equitable and has a long-term goal around it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Cogill. I would also like to echo what Commissioner Cogill has said. Thank you so much to the Parks Foundation and to our staff. This is a great partnership. This is a great step in the right direction. Happy to see it on the agenda finally, and looking forward to moving forward. So again, thanks to everyone involved. Any further, Commissioner Forney, sorry.
Thank you, Chair Vito. I'm not on this committee. Really, this is so exciting to know that we have such support from amazing community. It just always moves me when I see how philanthropic this community is. We have acknowledged this way of naming via a couple of contracts. I just have to speak that it's somewhat hard for me to be naming our assets. First of all, since we don't have an updated naming policy, that makes it difficult for me. And what I try to encourage people is that how are these names reflective of our values? And somehow I just feel there is some concern that I have of how this is utilized. I realize that these people are looking for an acknowledgement, and there's been so many ways throughout the years. I was the co-chair for the fundraising for the Lake Erie Bandstand. We built a kiosk specifically for those donors to be acknowledged. You can go throughout the whole city of all the different ways that things have been acknowledged. I do appreciate that we have put a part of each one of these names, what the, shall we say, the asset is, that is the playroom or the stairs and things like that, and I really do appreciate that. I just have some hesitation about the precedent that we are putting forth. I know that we did this with the LOPIT, and they were very sensitive to how it occurred. But I just, going forward, when we do consider our full policy, how does this reflect our values? That's all that I guess I'm trying to say. But I am just so appreciative of all of the fundraising that has occurred. Thank you, Minneapolis Parks Foundation, for all that you've done. Tom, Bruce, it's just amazing, that we've been able to do this without having to use taxpayer funds. And I want everybody to be acknowledged for the work that they've done and the funds that they have given to us. I just want to be sensitive to do they reflect our values.
Thank you, Commissioner Forney. Any further discussion? All those in favor of Resolution 2019-272, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes.
I'll move to adjourn.
So moved. All those in favor of adjournment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? We are adjourned.
It's gonna have to be planning because unless Londo.
Aren't there a couple of items from planning? Planning.
Correct. Chair, I thought operations and environment was next.
Oh, yeah.
You are.
Me?
Stephanie.
Yeah. All right, I'd like the time being 6:50, I'd like to call the Operations and Environmental Committee to order. Can you take the roll, Secretary, please?
Commissioner Severson.
Present.
Commissioner Cogill.
Here.
Commissioner Meyer.
Present.
Vice Chair French.
Here.
You have a quorum.
I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
I'd like to take, all in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Noes, abstentions? I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes from June 12, 2019.
So moved.
All in favor of approving the minutes from June 12, 2018, say aye.
Aye.
Noes, abstentions? Thank you. We have one action item. The board, well, we have a few action items. No, we only have one. The board adopts Resolution 2019-273, captions as follows. Resolution 2019-273, resolution appearing as a letter of understanding with the Regents of the University of Minnesota on behalf of Matthew Jones and the Center of Science, Technology, and Environmental Policy to conduct a carbon footprint analysis of the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board's operational greenhouse gas emissions.
So moved.
Second? So,
Presentation.
I would like to request.
so if there's any discussion or?
We have a presentation.
Yeah.
All right.
Good evening, Commissioners. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Lyndon Weisrada. I'm a management analyst with the Asset Management Department under Assistant Superintendent Jeremy Barrett. I'm excited to be here tonight to talk to you about this project and ask for your support for the letter of understanding with the University of Minnesota team. This project is directly tied to something you're very familiar with, the recently adopted performance goals that were put in place with the superintendent and the entire organization. In particular, performance goal C1, reduce the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board's carbon footprint by 10% and establish new targets by 2022. First off, I do want to say that this is a great goal and I'm really excited about it. And I'm excited to be working on this. The second thing I have to say is we are starting from pretty much scratch with this part. What you see here on these two graphs is one on the left that I essentially had to make up, which shows a 10% reduction in something. And the one on the right, which is where we'd like to go, that's the city of Minneapolis's carbon footprint that they've been reporting for well over a decade now and showing their year-by-year improvements. Ours, we don't have that data, and that's what this project is really about, is finding that data, attaching it to the park board's operations and activities, identifying the sources for the things that we put in the air, whether they're carbon or other greenhouse gases, and then identifying ways to reduce that as put forth in this performance goal. This project is building on both recent and long-term work done at the Park Board. Most recently is a budget goal through my department that we've been working on for 2019, which was to create a comprehensive energy action plan. That really was our term at the time for a lot of different initiatives coming together around energy use, energy efficiency, fuel and vehicles. But what it really lacked was this overarching goal of reducing our carbon footprint. Now that we have that, we can really put an umbrella in place, a framework in place to guide a lot of that work, as well as building on a lot of the work done in many past years, predating my time at the Park Board. I know some of you have been involved, some of our current executive team was involved, but this is really taking it to a much higher level for the organization, and I think that this is a really good place for us to be. This particular project is what we're proposing is to do this with a project team from the University of Minnesota's Center for Science, Technology, and Environmental Policy. This is a group at the Humphrey School of Public Affairs. Earlier this spring, the Park Board supported me in taking a course which allowed me to build some informal relationships with staff at this center to help identify that this is really the key. We have international and national experts literally down the street on these topics. So when this superintendent's goal was put in place, and we realized we really need to measure where we're starting from with our carbon footprint, we had the right people through informal relationships to start figuring out what that scope would look like. This team that we've identified, Matthew Jones and 3 other graduate researchers at the center, have immense technical knowledge and a variety of backgrounds, including with local governments, and they'll be able to work with the senior staff at the center to get feedback, to verify that what we're asking them to do can be done or can't be done in some cases. It's gone both ways through this informal phase. And really to provide back to us what we're calling a greenhouse gas accounting system. So that is something that we can use beyond this year if we do this project, but next year to prove that we've reduced it 5% towards that 10% goal, or blown it out of the water and done 50%, something we can continue to update year after year. And they will provide us with that framework that we can reuse, as well as train us how to do it, which is important. The scope of this project that we've identified so far is going to cover several different things, and we're following some pretty broadly used international standards for this for a couple of reasons. 1, because they exist and they're really well done. 2, because it makes our data comparable with other organizations, including the city of Minneapolis, New York City, any city in the world that uses these same frameworks. We can compare our data to theirs, and that's really, really useful for this sort of work. It also allows us to participate in larger efforts, formally and informally, to promote carbon reductions by ourselves and by others, because we're part of larger networks of groups doing the same work at that point. So these 3 scopes, 1, 2, and 3, and I find this diagram very helpful. I'm just going to put it into fairly simple terms. The first one, scope 1, is what are we directly responsible for putting in the air? We absolutely have to measure this. This is what we're burning in our vehicles and what we're burning with fuel in our buildings and facilities. Scope 2 is an indirect source. That's the utility power that we buy through our utility companies. We have limited control over that. We need it to power our facilities, but it's also really important to know what the impact and the footprint of those things are so that we can make conscious decisions to reduce them where possible. And then the last one, and really the biggest one, is scope 3. These are indirect things that we don't have total control over, but we may have some ability to influence them. A great example of this is trash and recycling. If we didn't put recycling in the parks, recycling receptacles, people wouldn't recycle. Our carbon footprint would be a lot bigger because it would be 100% trash. So that's a choice we make, but it is only indirect because users still have to put things in the correct containers. We can influence that through education and signage and promotion or enforcement, all sorts of different tools, but ultimately we don't have total control over it. So that's scope 3, and that scope 3 one can get very big and very messy. So we had to ask a lot of questions about what goes in scope 3. How do we decide for this first year that we're doing this analysis, what do we include or not include? And so those 3 criteria were as follows. Is it likely to be a significant portion of our carbon footprint? So if you picture our carbon footprint as a pie, how big is that piece? If it's minuscule, or we're pretty sure it's minuscule at this time, it may not be the right time to do it in our first attempt at this, simply because of time constraints, and resource constraints, I should say. Second, do we have data on it? Unfortunately, we don't have data on some of the things we would like to. We do have it on all the scope 1 and 2 sources that we've identified. But we don't necessarily have it for everything, even if we would like to. So, and then the last is really the key kind of squishy area, but that involves a lot of discussion between myself, other departments, your members on the board, which is, do we have any influence over this? There are some things we buy that are critical to our operations where we don't have a lot of choice in where we buy them from. Maybe there is only one source, maybe there is only one type of infrastructure that supports that facility. And until there are alternatives, if we can't change that, there's only so much we can do to reduce the carbon footprint from it. So really that becomes an issue of keep an eye on it and see if there's alternatives in the future, know what we can know about it, but it may just not be something we have any influence over. At the end of this project, what we intend to have is a comprehensive baseline estimate of all our greenhouse gas emissions. And I'm using greenhouse gas emissions and carbon footprint a little bit interchangeably. There's more than carbon involved in this, but all the data will be provided back to us in equivalents of carbon. So it could be any sort of other greenhouse gases, but the research team will do the calculations to tell us what the total carbon portion of that is as well. So for our purposes, they are interchangeable. They will provide us an in-house accounting system, spreadsheets and tools, as well as instructions and training on how to use them, so that a year from now, we can be updating the 2018 numbers with 2019 and see if we've made progress or not. They will also be providing a final report to identify, prioritize key areas for focusing our resources for both short and long-term improvements. We have this goal of by 2022 to have a 10% reduction. Part of that goal says to set future targets as well. If we hit 10% by next year, we can set a new goal with using some of these tools. If it takes us all 4 years to get to 10%, we need to start having long-term plans in place to chip away at future goals and future reductions. And the report that they'll provide back to us will help us identify where we can really get, the most effective changes, as well as things that we really just need to be thinking about in the future. And lastly, and this is a big one for me because it really comes to my department a lot, is changes to improve our ability to measure and report on additional sources. So those are those scope 3 things that we want to measure a lot of, but we don't always have the data for or the ability to measure them. So they're going to identify some key areas where maybe we have some gaps that the team would have liked to identify, researcher and I identify, or I would have liked to, but we're not able to this year. Formalizing that will help us come back to the board at some point and say we would like new systems, energy tracking software, things like that, so that this work can continue and build year after year. This is really phase 1 of something that needs to be an ongoing initiative to be successful. Any questions? Oh, and I should add, the reason that this was put on both the committee and the full board on the same night is because we had everything set up using a master contract with the University of Minnesota and the city of Minneapolis, and then after we had already initiated that, kind of the rug pulled out from us, miscommunication between the city departments. And I would like to thank our legal and our finance teams for helping find an alternative contracting vehicle on very short notice. And the executive team for getting it onto the board tonight. So I apologize for that.
Thank you for that explanation, Lyndon. Commissioner Meyer.
Thank you. This is really the highlight of my day. Really
for that.
Excited to see this happen. It is, unfortunate that it's taken us this long. We're, like you said, a decade behind the city, and there's probably a lot of low-hanging fruit that we could have taken care of a long time ago. But I'm glad we're getting started now, and we have a top-notch team with the University of Minnesota to do it. And I'm eager for them to get started. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner Severson.
Thank you, Chair Musich. I agree. I feel like as a park board, we're a little bit behind on this, and I think that we can play catch up fast. And I think this is something that this whole board would actually agree on with this one. The thing that drives me nuts is we have all these flat roofs, specifically in our recreation centers or even this building. And as if you're a geek like me, you're often looking at Google Maps and other things, and I see all these solar roofs popping up everywhere on churches, and Minneapolis Public Schools appears to be doing a good job along with the city of Minneapolis. But I don't see the park board doing it too often. So I think it's a great opportunity
And maybe we need to give direction as a board to speed this up a little bit and make sure that we allocate more funding for this in the future. So thank you so much, and thank to the University of Minnesota. They are a great partner doing this specific kind of work.
Thank you.
Commissioner Forney.
Thank you. I'm not on this committee, so I appreciate, first, Lyndon, this is very exciting. You commented that you were using words interchangeably, and what I'm understanding what each one of them, I'm not looking for that type of definition, but I'm wanting to throw in carbon sequestration in there, and whether or not have we been measuring that to date?
Chair Musich, Commissioner Forney, that is an excellent question, and we have actually done some of that analysis through our forestry department, and I have completely forgotten the name of the tool they've used, but I know that they have done that analysis. The distinction that I'll make is what we're going to look at with this project is solely our emissions. What are we responsible for putting out into the environment, out into the air, whereas our trees are actually sequestering and removing things from the air, and we can plant more trees and remove more, but we can, first off and more effectively, reduce our own impact as well. And so that's what this is going to focus on. But they're really two sides of the same coin. I don't know off the top of my head when that analysis was last done. iTree, thank you. 2004. So I'm sure that's something in the near future.
2004? Oh, okay.
Yeah. And there are good tools for that. I mean, updating at some point is obviously something that would go hand in hand with this work, I think.
And I'm probably speaking out of any of my fields, but somehow I do, like you say, there are two sides of the same coin and everything, is our benefit of the sequestration, and emissions, and I'm not sure if I say balance or whatever. What I guess I'm trying to say is that in 2 years we're going to be losing our reforestation fee, and how possibly this information can help tee up or change up what we might request. You know, that one supports the other or one balances the other, I guess is what I'm just, to put that thinking cap on, because what we contribute, it's kind of like going back to the old water bill thing, you know, what we take in as far as, you know, water runoff, whatever, but we're paying out, anyway, that somehow, is there some sort of balance that we can leverage? I'm not sure if that's the right word, but particularly considering that we're going to be looking at the loss of the reforestation fee, potentially, and, you know, how maybe we can align those together. Just a way to think about
Chair
that.
Musich, Commissioner Forney, I think you're, I'm going way out on a limb, tree pun intended, that to some degree, having this information, quantifying it, so that we know, I don't think it's a stretch. I think Systology actually showed it with some higher level analysis on a project last year, that our total emissions were more than offset by our tree canopy, but that to some degree we don't have the ability at this time to go 100% carbon free, not in the immediate term, nowhere close, honestly. But if we can quantify the parts that we don't have the ability to reduce at this time, we can make arguments for alternative offsets and things like that. So knowing what we would have to offset is really part of this, absolutely. As to the rest of it, I think there's some really good but very large questions you asked there. I've sort of extended myself already with my ability to answer them. But I think this will provide valuable justification.
Absolutely. Good. We're on the same wavelength, and I'm really excited about it. Thank you.
Commissioner Cogill.
Thank you, Chair Musich. Thank you for the presentation, Lyndon. This is very, very cool. I am wondering about the third bullet on this slide that's still up, the identify and prioritize key areas for targeting resources to make short and long-term reductions. I'm wondering if you can at all expand upon the approaches there. It kind of ties into what Commissioner Forney was just mentioning. I would be concerned if our approach was just to identify how we've offset our other carbon emissions to lead to reductions in overall emissions, as opposed to prioritizing ways we can shrink our overall use of things that emit carbon. Does that make sense, and do you have any comments on?
Chair
approach
Misich,
there?
Commissioner Kogel, I think the only way I can think to answer that is maybe offer a couple examples. So if this analysis comes back and it says 75% of our total footprint is from our buildings, then I would imagine that some of the short-term recommendations would be things like maybe we hire an additional electrician whose entire job is LED fixture upgrades and replacements. Currently, our regular electricians do that as part of other work when they're doing other rehabs or larger scale improvements, but it's no one's full-time job. The city of Minneapolis hired 2 full-time electricians who have been going through buildings year after year and upgrading every single one of their 30,000 fixtures.
Gotcha.
And that has a 2 to 3 year payoff and return on investment, but it also immediately brings down their electricity bill. Now, if it comes back and the results say that our 75% of our footprint is because of our fleet and vehicles, then rather than hire those electricians, maybe those limited resources should be targeted to upgrading EV charging infrastructure for fleets. But just knowing the sources and the breakdown will allow us, and that the EV infrastructure is a much more long-term planning thing. Most of our commercial vehicles we use don't have EV alternatives. They don't exist on the market.
Right.
They will in the near future, some of them at least. So before those exist, before Ford makes a F-150 truck that's EV, we need charging stations. And if we know that our fleet is the problem, that's where our resources should be targeting an effective long-term strategy to bring down our carbon footprint. Does that answer?
That is helpful, and
Okay.
my small follow-up question then to that is, you give the example of replacing LED lights is, and this is maybe more a question for Superintendent Barrick, is one of the things on the table also just, instead of replacing the lights, maybe reducing the number of lights that we have? So that's sort of more the question of, like, when we're evaluating all of our approaches, is one of the approaches reduction in stuff compared to just replacement of stuff to be more sustainable?
So, Commissioner Calgo, I can answer one part of that, and then I'll see if Michael and Jeremy have additional comments. But the short version is our electrical shop is doing a great job of every upgrade they do, making sure that if it's eligible in any way, whether it's a gym light or outdoor eaves lights or path lighting, for that matter, our planning department as well, in new projects and rehabs, putting LEDs in. Like I mentioned, those are very cost effective and have an immediate impact. We also can get rebates for those, so it pays for the next one. So we do that in the course of our normal business. As to reducing lights, I mean, there's a number of different reasons or ways you can go about that, but I think that's mostly outside of my department.
Gotcha.
So,
thank you.
Chair Misich, Commissioner Kogel, just connected with Michael on that, because as part of MPP 20, as we go in and rehab these facilities and change things out, we are always looking for more energy efficiency and stuff. But the key that Michael brings up to balance is safety, ease of use. So reducing lights, as long as we can maintain the safe level of lighting in public space, yes, we can. We'll do that. But we do look at those things as we go through these rehabs.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Severson for the second time.
Commissioner Kogel helped bring up some more questions in my head. Do we have data on recreation centers, on which ones cost more than others? Same with operations or headquarters. Do we have that hard data to know how much each center costs, and are we attacking the higher cost ones to bring them, not just for the environment, but the actual cost, the bottom line down?
Chair Misich, Commissioner Severson, we have some. It's not always cost data. We have equivalent data. So, for instance, I can tell you which ones we pay a higher trash bill for, but it's usually because they're producing more trash. Or more recycling for that matter. We don't have a side-by-side comparison of the rec centers. Part of this is, as much as possible with the data sources we have for this project, to attribute them to the facility types. So, for instance, we don't want just all buildings. We want to know which buildings, which types of buildings. Is it rec centers? Is it maintenance facilities, ice arenas, or golf clubhouses that really have a disproportionate impact on the total of buildings? So as much as possible, we will break that down. I will tell you, utility data is a lot of addresses and ID numbers, and it's very hard to attribute some of our systems. Some of them, it's the rec center, the pool, and the athletic lights on the same meter. So it may not even be the building per se. And then on a different site that's using the same amount of electricity, they may have 3 separate meters, and you can say that it's just the building. So there's those are long-term improvements. I'd like to put smarter meters in place on some of these things. And some of it is really just age of facilities. If it hasn't been upgraded in a long time, it's probably using less efficient, less high efficiency HVAC equipment, things like that. But that's where NPP 20 and a lot of the work that the planning division has been leading recently is identifying and improving those things on a systematic basis.
Yeah, I guess that's my question. If we compare Falwell Park to North Commons Park, you know, if the bills are much higher in one place compared to the other, what are we doing to reduce that, and why is that park better than this park, or why is this operations center? So that's exciting. I like it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no further questions, I have a couple for you. Your light's still on. I just wanted to verify, although we are utilizing now a different contract than the city of Minneapolis will be using, are we still going to be then utilizing the same criteria for our assessment of our use and creation of carbon output as the city of Minneapolis is utilizing for theirs, so that there's a comparability factor between the two?
Chair Musich, I have met with the City of Minneapolis sustainability staff, and we'll do so again in the near future before the project started and once we have approval to begin, to make sure that they're interchangeable. They have a maturity factor on us. They have multiple staff in-house who are competent to do this, so we're learning from them more than anything. But one of the big benefits of this is that historically, their carbon footprint has excluded the park board. It's not part of operations by public government. We're lumped in with businesses and houses. By doing this, we'll be able to be broken out as our own self-standing entity. So they will be coming to us to use this data, hopefully, in the future.
Okay, fantastic. And they're not counting parkland as part of their carbon offsets, right?
Chair Musich, I would bet that everyone counts the trees in Minneapolis as part of their offsets, whether it's the city, county, or state of Minnesota, Met Council for that matter. I'm pretty sure our trees are being counted at least 5 times.
Yeah, so that is a concern for me because if many people are utilizing the same object as meeting a goal, they're not actually meeting that goal. And it is an incredibly important goal that we work up towards collectively. So if there would be a way for us to consult with those entities and ensure that they understand if they're going to use that, they need to be utilizing our data and attributing it to the data we are collecting to ensure that there isn't that reproduction, that would be lovely. I also wanted to verify that we will be including buildings and structures that are located on park property but operated by other entities and may be paying utility bills separately from us. And I know that's probably not something you can answer right now, but if you could look into that and let me know, I'd appreciate it. I would hope that we would include that, since it is, those people are serving park users or serving park uses, and therefore it is ultimately our responsibility.
Chair Musich, did you have some in mind? I have a few. If they're tenants of the park board, we do have access to at least partial data sets.
Okay.
But for instance, the school board, I've not looked into that, and I don't have access to their data for shared sites, for example.
Okay, so I'm thinking about
in mind.
things like where we've put up utility connections for vendors like Wheel Fund Rentals, or people that are setting up food trucks or other vendor type activities for events within the system. Like I don't know where the meters exist to track that information. So I just wanted to make sure that if someone is paying a bill separately from us, that we would incorporate their data as well. And I'm hoping that the customer service group can assist in that, or the assistant superintendent's office.
Chair
Could a
Musich,
deputy
the finance
superintendent's
department
office
and
could
I have
assist with that?
become very good friends over
Okay.
this project so far. Basically, everything is a case-by-case basis. I completely forgot the name of the paddle company on the river.
Wheel Fund, I don't know the paddle company, sorry.
The boat company, for instance, we actually get their bill and then they pay it through us. So we have that one, for example.
Okay.
Our concessionaires, we have the Wheel Fund ones, we own those meters, so we have the data. But there are some cases where there was a handshake agreement, before most of us were born, and for some reason we don't own a single meter in some places. We are taking those on one by one, but it's an ongoing process.
Okay, so we are trying to capture that. That's what I was
Anything we
looking
can
to hear.
capture, we're
So
capturing.
Thank you for that. I'm pleased to hear that my colleagues are really excited about looking to reduce our carbon footprint. I do know that I heard a lot about solar, and while solar is exciting and shiny and people love it, it also requires that we have structures that are that have the structural integrity and load-bearing capability to have PV on them, and many of our buildings don't have that, which we discovered, I don't remember how many years ago it was, but when we tried to put solar on a couple of buildings as part of a grant we received, we found that the buildings could not sustain the loading that would create. So I'm hopeful that as part of this, we don't just think about solar, because there are other tools that are much less expensive that achieve lower energy use in other capacities that I'd love to see us consider, and that would be potentially putting lightweight green roofs on some of our flat-roofed buildings. There's a number of innovations that have been made in that realm that allow for not very heavy green roof installations that also then would extend the life of our roofs, thus giving the taxpayer a little bit more bang for their buck, while also capturing stormwater runoff, which many of my colleagues have mentioned a number of times. They would like to see less of it happening in park spaces that disrupt recreational use. The other thing that I would love to see us looking at is increasing the reflectivity and reducing the solar loading on buildings. Many flat roofs are just black and absorb a ton of energy, thus increasing the cost for us to cool those buildings. So a number of other municipalities have started looking at painting those roofs white or gray to increase their reflectivity and reduce the solar load to that building, thus decreasing the amount of electricity or gas required to cool those buildings. The other thing I'm hoping we're going to look at is the potential to put solar over parking lots, potentially through partnership with community solar programs that would pay to put that stuff on our property, but also then provide people that are visiting the parks via car an opportunity to park under covered parking, thus keeping their cars cooler and reducing the amount of energy they have to use in terms of burning fossil fuels to cool their vehicles. I got a number of other ideas, but those are just the big picture ones that seem more doable potentially than really expensive retrofitting of buildings to accommodate PV. So I don't have anything else. I don't see anyone else with their lights on. Thank you so very much for taking the time to put this together. I'm so sorry that you weren't able to do it under the initial contract that we thought we'd be able to do. I know it's painful to have to go here. So thanks for the time, energy that everyone's put into this. Look forward to the results. And with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. All those in favor, please signify by saying, sorry. It's not a study report item. We have to move it forward. So I'm assuming this already got moved because we're having a discussion. Yes. So at this time, all those in favor of approving Resolution 2019-273, do you want me to read it? No? Okay, lovely. Please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? That motion carries and will be voted on again in the full board. At this time now, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Quina.
Okay, my mic will come back on. My mic will come back on.
But we are now adjourned. Thank you.
I will convene the planning committee. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Commissioner Severson.
Present.
Commissioner Meyer.
Present.
Commissioner Vita. Present. Vice Chair Cogill.
Present.
Chair Forney.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. I'll take a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? I'll take a motion to approve the minutes of Wednesday, June, excuse me, not January 26, 2019.
So moved.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So moved. Okay, I do want to remind people, we got a little bit out of control last time that I don't want to put limits on, but I really would like people to stick to 2 minutes with their discussion items, and encourage everybody to, of course, ask questions of staff prior to the meeting. So on that, I'll take a motion to move the resolution 2019-274.
I'll move Resolution 2019-274, a resolution granting an access and utility agreement to CenterPoint Energy for underground valve vaults in George E. Todd Park and collecting appropriate fees associated with the access and utility agreement.
Is there any, I don't see any lights. Does anybody even want a presentation? No questions? Nothing? Christine, I'm sorry to disappoint you on that. I'll take a motion then to move Resolution 2019.
Do you want to vote on it? I don't know.
I'm
Or
sorry.
not.
No.
Just overwhelmed that we didn't have any questions. Okay. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So moved. Okay, then I'll take.
I'd like to move Resolution 2019-275, a resolution granting an access and utility agreement to CenterPoint Energy for an underground value vault in Diamond Lake Park and collecting appropriate fees associated with the access and utility agreement.
No questions or concerns on that either? Oh, wow, exciting.
Got one.
Okay, Commissioner.
How
Okay.
much money are we getting? What kind of fees are associated?
Commissioner Forney and Commissioner Cogill, I believe that the area that they're requesting for the Diamond Lake Park valve vault is a little bit over 900 square feet, and we calculated the fee for that license based on the property that is adjacent to that space. It was a little over $12 a square foot. So it was like a little bit over $11,000.
All right.
And I do have that. It's in the agreement. I apologize. That wasn't available until shortly before the meeting, so.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you, Christine. I just wanted to note a couple of things about this. As far as the utilities going through our park property, it is something that we've been more proactive in looking out for that. If any of you remember, USI Wireless was looking to extend lines all over through our parks and everything. And we said, if you cannot find any other viable way to access, we will entertain it. They did not present any alternatives or where CenterPoint has been very good as far as doing this. And so they've been a wonderful partner as far as verifying that this is the only way. And to me, this is really important. I mean, I suppose because I'm a real estate person, to understand what encroachments are, where they are, is very, very critical for us to understand in going forward. And I appreciate all Christine's work and, like I say, the partnership with CenterPoint. So both of these items will be going to the full board. So all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? And it's moved. Okay.
I would like to move Resolution 2019-276, a resolution approving the purchase agreement to purchase Towerside Park and amending the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board 2019 through 2024 capital improvement program to allocate $55,000 in 2019 to Towerside Park from the Prospect Park neighborhood portion of the Parkland Dedication Fund for legal and administrative costs.
Any questions here we have on this? No questions? Okay. Jeff, thank you very much. What are you called? You're the Promise? The Prospect Park Promise? Anyway, and thank you for your promise. To me, this is a fine example of how developers have realized how important parkland is in activating their properties as well, and also understanding that we, the Park Board, that's our business, and we do a good job at it. So I really appreciate your partnership with us, and look forward to somewhat October having a real park space. This is truly exciting. I mean, we keep adding on to our park system in areas that are growing and expanding, and you have done it beautifully. I appreciate it. So all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? It is moved. I will then take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We are adjourned.
Reconvene the regular meeting of July 10th and go to Chair Musich.
On behalf of the Operations and Environment Committee, I would move Resolution 2019-273. It's a resolution approving a letter of understanding with the Regents of the University of Minnesota on behalf of Matthew Jones and the Center for Science, Technology, and Environmental Policy to conduct a carbon footprint analysis of the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board's operations greenhouse gas emissions.
273 has been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? It carries. Chair Forney.
On behalf of the Planning Committee, I'd like to move Resolution 2019-274, resolution granting an access and utility agreement to CenterPoint Energy for underground valve vaults in George E. Todd Park and collecting appropriate fees associated with the access and utility agreement.
74 has been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, I just have one question. I thought I heard Commissioner Forney refer to this as an encroachment. It's my understanding that this is not an encroachment and does not require a roll call and 6 votes. Council or Assistant Superintendent Schroeder.
I mean, they are putting property on here. I would say this is a 6-vote matter.
Okay.
They're going to have facilities permanently on our property.
Right.
Is there an issue with the way the resolution is written and it's not referenced as an encroachment?
Can we just request a roll call?
I mean, no, I don't think it's an agreement. I mean, an agreement could be a lease or encroachment or anything. I'd recommend you have 6 votes because it's going to be.
Okay. Okay. Then I would ask the Secretary to take a roll.
Commissioner Vita.
Aye.
Commissioner French. Absent. Commissioner Forney.
Aye.
Commissioner Musich.
Aye.
Commissioner Cogill.
Aye.
Commissioner Severson.
Aye.
Commissioner Meyer.
Aye.
President Bourne.
Aye.
You have 7 ayes, 2 absent.
2019-274 carries. Chair Forney.
I'd like to move Resolution 2019-275, resolution granting an access and utility agreement to CenterPoint Energy for an underground valve vault in Diamond Lake Park and collecting appropriate fees associated with the access and utility agreement.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
2019-275 has been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, I would ask the Secretary to take a roll.
Commissioner Vita.
Aye.
Commissioner Forney.
Aye.
Commissioner Musich.
Aye.
Commissioner Cogill.
Aye.
Commissioner Severson.
Aye.
Commissioner Meyer.
Aye.
You have 7 ayes, 2 absent.
Thank you.
Pardon me. President Bourne.
Thank you. The resolution carries. Commissioner
Did you want to
Seaver-
vote?
I forgot to ask you to vote.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, you have 7 ayes, 2 absent.
The motion carries. Before I entertain a motion to adjourn, Commissioner Severson, you had stepped in the hallway during when I was asking folks for petitions and communications. Is there anything you have to share with the board?
Just quickly, Live on the Drive is tomorrow at Victory Memorial. Parkway. It's a great opportunity to come out, listen to some good music, get some good food. I encourage anyone that's here this evening to come out, or anyone watching. Christelle Porter, the Executive Director of the Cleveland Neighborhood Association, does a phenomenal job with that. So, and then last but not least, Safety Camp is phenomenal. I used to work it as a young man when I worked for the Park Board. It's at Theater Worth all day tomorrow. Stop in, check it out. It is a really, really cool deal. So, thanks.
I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, we are adjourned.
They are.
Tomorrow at 10 a.m.
Yeah, they are.